Caption. Okay, so today we are going to work on lab 3. The majority of a big chunk of the exercise is going to be setting up FTP. And then you've seen how web servers set up before. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to perform some scan with the actual server that we set up. So the Kali Linux system is going to be its own server and scanner all in one, right? We are our target and our assessment system all in one. So keep in mind, and you can follow the instruction. Go to Kali Linux to download your virtual machine, and we're using VirtualBox. So if you're doing this on your laptop or home, make sure you have VBox app installed and also 7-zip to extract your VM once you download it. So I put down some links for you to go to in case you need to download. Now, there are two ways that you can open your virtual machine. First, you need to extract the downloaded machine. So right-click, show more options, 7-zip after you install it. Here you don't, but they already installed it for you. So click extract files. You can open up the extracted folder and double-click the blue file, which loads everything into the VirtualBox app, and it's going to play the default. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my VirtualBox. I'm going to mount the virtual machine that I have extracted so I can change the configuration. You don't have to do it for this lab, but if you give it more RAM and processor, typically it's going to respond faster. The performance of your scan is going to be better. So when you do security scan, just give your virtual machine a little bit more resources depending on also your hardware. So click add. And I'm going to go ahead and navigate to downloads because that's where I extracted my virtual machine. So I will double click, open up the subfolder. So double click there and I can click the blue file. So you can click add in the app, or if you double click the blue file, it automatically launch the virtual machine with the default setting, which is dual core and 2 gig of RAM, right? Minimal. So I'm going to mount my virtual machine to my playlist, and then go to settings, and you can give your virtual machine on the bottom, which is your base memory. You can give it more. So I'm going to give it 8 gig because my system have 32 gig. So if you have 16 at home, you can give 4,000 for your virtual machine. Your Windows operating system typically requires about 4 gig for its base. And so if you have 16 gig, that should be all right. So I give this machine 8,000, and then the processor, I'm going to make it quad core. So 4 core out of 16 there. So just look at your existing system and then divide it up between the host and the virtual machine. And then you can apply or click OK. Check your settings, and then you can start. But if you double click, it will start with the base. It's just a slower virtual machine. So that's how you can go and change your configuration for your VM. Once it boots, I'm going to log in using the default username and password that you see there. And then we are going to update and install the package for FTP. Currently, we're using secure FTP. So for Linux, we are going to use VSFTPD. This is a way that we can use the package to activate our system as an FTP server. So you can host FTP server from a client system or a server system with more hardware. Typically, in a big in a larger scale environment, you want to have a server system with better hardware. But I want to show you how you can use a Linux machine and install this package to make it an FTP server. FTP is used to distribute or share files. I can upload some files and other users can download my files. Company can use secure FTP to distribute forms, right? We have some public FTP server like for Mozilla. So once my system boot, I'm going to go ahead and log in. So you're going to type in your username and your password. I will leverage this so you can see the step. And you can copy and paste the command if you don't want to type it. But if you want to type it, you're welcome to do that. It's always good to practice. Once I have my desktop, right, logged in, I'm going to open up the terminal. You can also press the shortcut key. Control-Alt-T is going to open up the terminal. Just make sure you click the VM. If you need help with VM loading, let me know. So click the terminal, which is the black square box. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see the font. And you can have as many terminal as you need. You know, sometimes we have to leave a terminal open and open another window for terminal. Hopefully it's not too hard on your eye there with a little bit less light. Okay. So now we would start with the first step. Always update your Kali or your Linux system first. So sudo apt update. You can also do apt-get. Apt-get is really for Ubuntu. And then we want to confirm by using the password that we have or the credential. So that's step 1 and 2 for part A. And it's going to take a few minutes to run your updates. So if you run into installation package problem, go back, update, and then install. It's always like that. Sometimes you have to update in between, depending on how extended period of time that you're using. So once we have the update, then we can install the VSFTPD. This is going to allow us to run FTP service on our system to make it an FTP server. Okay, so you can copy the command, go to your virtual machine and paste it, or you can type it. Once this is done, what we're going to do is we are going to make a copy of the configuration file. We're going to install a firewall and enable it, right? I'm going to do some security practices here. So now the reason why we want to have a backup of the configuration file is that in case we messed up, we can always go back to the original. So you're going to do a cp command, which is for copy the original configuration file, and then you are going to make a copy of that. Okay, if it doesn't complain, then everything is good, your syntax is good, and it executes. Then we're going to install the firewall for Linux, which is your UFW. I want to teach you how you can turn on your firewall for your Linux system, like your server. You have to install it and enable it, and then add the rules for the ports that use for your services. So ports are like windows and doors to our home. And so if you open a certain windows and door, you want to tell the system that, so that way it allows those open windows and doors. Okay, so we are going to install the firewall. Now you can do without it, but for security reasons, we want to be able to control which ports are open and which ports are closed. Once you have the firewall installed, you need to enable it so that way it is working, right? So we simply would use UFW, which is the firewall, and then enable option with that. Or subcommand, I should say. And it should tell you firewall is active, right? Before we didn't have a firewall. Now we install the firewall and we turn it on. But we need to create rules for the firewall. So within this lab, you learn how to also add firewall to your Linux system and then create policy or rules for your firewall. So for FTP, we will be using port 2021. Since we're not using SSH secure FTP with this, we don't require port 22. So your common port for FTP in general is the lower, and we're going to use 990 with this one, and it's under TCP. So at this point, we are going to allow so the firewall, when it filters it, anything that comes through these windows and door, it accepts, right? So if you allow, it won't reject it. Just know which port that you're using for your default port, your common port, or if you use specific non-common port. We're also gonna enable, so in a large-scale FTP, you want a range of port because you don't just have a user that uses one door or window. You have many systems that are going to access your FTP. So what we're going to do is we're going to use passive ports. We're going to allow 40,000 and 50,000 range, right, for connectivity. So these are additional doors and windows that we're going to use. So we're going to copy this. So this gets added to the rule, and as you notice, it tells you rule added and rule version 6 added. So traffic from IPv4 and IPv6 will be allowed for these added ports. Then we want to check the status. So if you update the policy for the firewall, you want to make sure you have a follow-up. Sorry. My throat is dry. So paste. Sorry, let me do that again. Status give you a summary of the rules that you have allowed. And so you would see the listing of your ports for IP version 4 and version 6. V6 is down here. Okay? And in this case, we allow it from anywhere. So there's no requirement in the source. So that's a simple rule creation in your Linux firewall. Take a screenshot here for step 9, and then it should allows you to see how many rules are listed. So technically, we added 2 rules, but it enabled that for version 4 and version 6, so it would be 4 total. Then we are going to make a directory. You always want to have organized container for FTP for specific user. So if you have a million user, you are going to have a million directories, so that will contain the uploads and downloads. You don't want many, like 10 million files floating around for different people. This also allows us to control permission for those objects. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a directory for our test user, and it's called FTP. Okay? Oh, sorry, I skipped one. First, we're going to make a user. I skip a step. So let's do an add user command, and we're going to make a user account for our system. That allows you to create a directory for that user. So I just reuse, so you can just make a password. I simply just use Kali for the test purposes. And you don't have to fill out everything here, but in the real world for real user, you want to be able to update the information like full name. So you can just press enter and continue until you get to the confirmation and you type Y for yes to confirm all the information is correct and press enter. So it tells you that in step 11. So after you create a user, it's going to create a test user directory, and then we can do an FTP folder underneath, a subfolder. So I'm going to add the FTP folder or directory to the test user folder, right? So you start with creating the user for your server. Then you would make the folder for that user to use under FTP. Now it should be able to do that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to control the permission, the access level for that user. So as you learn in operating system classes, right, or security class, chmod allows you to control the permissions for the object. Basically, the path to that object is listed following that. So we are going to remove the write permission for that account. We're only going to let them view, and then we're going to verify the changes in the permission. There are other ways that you can modify Linux permission, right? You can use numerical value, but this is a way that you can use the letter to indicate write. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the write permission, and then we are going to, oh, I forgot to change the 13. Yeah, I forgot to change the ownership real quick. Let's do that. I've been skipping steps today, right? First, we can do the change of ownership. So the way that it works is we can specify like the group membership on who owns this folder. So we're going to change the ownership, then we're going to change the permission. Once you do that, I'm going to repeat the write. So you can see it should be fine either or. Sequentially, it probably doesn't matter because they're not interrelated, but you would do ownership and permission. Then we're going to do an ls-la. This is allowing us to look at your list object attributes, which is going to be permission related. Oh, I had copied the colon. Okay. So it tells me that there is the change in my ownership that I did earlier for the node group. And then also, right, the allowable permissions. So take a screenshot of your listed permission and the directory permission. So are they able to read, write, execute? What's going on? So X is for execute, R is for read, and W is for write. When we remove the write permission, right, for that folder, that means if they cannot write, they cannot save other objects into that folder. So we wanted to be able to test it, right? And it would give you the timestamp there. Okay, so once we have the folder set up, what we're going to do is we are going to put in another subfolder called files. Now, by default, a folder within a folder, it's going to inherit the outer folder's attributes or characteristics, right? So file is going to inherit whatever you set for FTP by default. This is the same in Linux as it is in Windows. So the child object is going to inherit the outside or the parent object. So we're going to make a subfolder inside the FTP folder for the test user called files. And once we do that, we check the permission to make sure that it is parallel to what you set on the outside folder. So you can check the outside folder permission and the inside if you like. So in this case, when we do that, it also gives us the root, right? Root has access to files. Then so as you can see, different level or different account has different level of access, permission, I should say. Now, once you are done with setting up the subdirectory, you are going to create a file and you're going to append the string that you put there, VSFTP test file. So the pipe allows you to connect two commands together. We're going to append whatever that's in the quotation mark into a file called test.txt, right? And it should tell you what it appended because it streamed the character into that text file. So we're going to echo, and many ways to make a file. You've seen that in the previous lab. We're going to do an echo command, which append the string into the test.txt. And it tells us that it appended the string that we give it, whatever that's in the quotation mark. And then we are going to configure the FTP server using the configuration file. We backed it up earlier. So you are going to use a text editor, and Nano comes with Kali Linux. Okay. Now you can use Nano in Apple terminal or console, they call it. It is very close. You can just install it. You can use any text editor to edit text, of course, right? You can use text editor to write programs and scripts. So we're going to use Nano. And configuration file looks like this, right? You see a hashtag, that's a comment. And in programming world, a comment is ignored by compiler or interpreter. So to make it effective, you need to remove some of the hashtag in front of the line sometimes. What we're going to do is we are going to go down using the arrow key, right? Click on the file and use the arrow key to move your cursor. You need to find anonymous enable, and we're going to turn it on. So secure FTP configuration, it turns off anonymous user. Anonymous user is a user account that require minimal password or no password at all in some cases, right? So now in security practice, we don't allow anonymous user by default. So if you see it in white, right, you go to that line and you move your cursor to the right using the right arrow key. Delete the no in capital and type capital yes. That's how you change the setting in configuration file Linux. So we're going to enable anonymous. Yes, this lower our security. We're just testing to see if our FTP server is responding to a certain type of request or not, right? Let's say you have an FTP server that has anonymous login enabled. It would have this feature. Then you're going to move your cursor down a few lines and you check to see if local enable is available. Yes. Right. And then I'm sorry.
Just noticing the comment above it, it says uncomment this to allow local users to log in.
Yeah. Uncomment this setting.
Okay.
If you comment it, it will be blue. It's already uncommented in the first place. Right. And then you are going to go down and you're going to find write enable, which is like a couple lines down. That one, you need to delete the hashtag in front of it, right? Remove the hashtag in front of the line. That enable the write. So we would have write enable. Then we're going to go down and we're going to look for a chroot local user. That's going to be a little bit further down, but in between, depending on the admin, right, you can change some configuration to play and tweak it. I just want to show you how, right, like anonymous, make directory enable. So if they can make a subfolder, right, you would enable that option and so on, right? These are some of the settings that comes with the file and we can change it. So we're going to look for chroot. It should be like a little bit more down. Like chown is there. You can also use search in text editor. So chroot local is like a little bit further down. I want to say after list enable below. So we're gonna delete the hashtag in front of the C and make sure chroot local user yes, right? And then for step 25, you're gonna copy all of these settings from our lab, right? You're gonna go to the end of the file, just arrow key all the way down. After UTF-8 file system, you're gonna right click and you're gonna paste. So this is how you can add additional settings to the file if you don't have it already in Exist. We're gonna have a subtoken for the user account called user. There's a local root for that user account under FTP. Good night. Take care. We had enabled port 40,000 and 50,000 for passive connection earlier, remember, in our firewall, so we can add that there. Our user list enabled, so whatever that we put in the file called the user list, right, including our test user, which is what we're going to do next, is enabled. So if you don't have this, whatever you throw into that file will not correlate. And then the file where that user list exists, here's the path. And we are not going to reject user list. We're not going to deny it. We're going to allow it. So this basically give us the user list file to reference the accounts that access FTP server. Okay. So once you copy paste it, you're going to press Control X. It's going to say Control X is to exit. Do you want to save this? We're going to say Y, press yes. Press Y for yes. We're going to save it as the same name. So press enter to use the same name. And it's going to take you back to your terminal. So we're going to copy and paste this to the end of our nano text file, right? And save it by pressing Control X, yes, and enter. Once we're done, we are going to add the test user account that was locally created into the user list file that we just enabled, right? So you're going to do an echo there. So you can echo into any format file, really. It's just append whatever that you are trying to append to the target file, right? So the user list contains all the user account for our FTP server. And it tells me that it added that test user to that file. Once you have that, right, which is step 27, you are going to restart your server, okay? Because you want to refresh whatever that you have just changed, even though it's enabled or started earlier. So we're going to restart the service. Always do that every time. You don't have to reboot the entire system. You just need to restart the service. In the case that it doesn't start, then sometimes you have to reboot. It might start upon reboot. Now we are going to confirm our IP address so that way we can use it for target information. We are going to type in IP space address for Linux system. And the IP we're going to use is under the interface Ethernet 0 because your virtual machine sees itself connecting as an Ethernet connection by default, right? Even if you're using this on your laptop or your portable system, the VM is designed to see itself connecting as F0 unless you add in another interface. So I put down the IP address for you already. When you use a local system, see you later. Like in the URL, it actually referred to the loopback address. Oh, thank you.
Students left that back.
Oh, okay. I'll put a note. It refers to a loopback address, which is the 127.0.0.1. And then the inet 6 is the version 6 address. So we would record the version 4. Most of the tool have the default IPv4. Now, what we're gonna do is we are going to connect. Yes, question?
Yeah, I'm having a problem with the virtual machine. I tried everything, it just wouldn't open.
To start?
Yeah, it just wouldn't even start out. It doesn't even open.
Says it cannot acquire the C open object.
Yeah, I tried everything. Delete it, restart it.
So this is your download?
Yeah, I set the option up there.
I can define it.
Yeah, that's the file just downloaded.
Let's re-extract it. So make sure you don't use the Windows extraction. Make sure you just now
That's right there. Scroll.
it's fine. Let's open it.
That's what to say.
Your app itself is badly installed. So yeah, so this is your virtual machine is fine.
I mean, it was working last week.
Yeah, but it might have something got corrupted on this system. My advice for you is to well, let's try it again. Wait, you can try to save this so you don't have to download. But when you reboot, it might wipe everything. So let's try. Yeah, whether you double click. So sometime after.
Yeah.
So this basically what happens is it cannot, when they install the app, somehow it lost the link to the actual object in the code. So it's not loading your complete app. You can restart the system and see if that works.
I did that too, just one.
Yeah, move.
Thank you.
Yeah, behind yours. Yeah, I will put in a ticket for that one to be fixed.
It's fine. Just
Other questions? Okay, so once we have our IP address, then now what we're going to do is we're going to use that to reach our server that we are locally hosted. So we are going to do FTP-P and then 10.0.2.15, right? And it should say connected if you did everything accordingly, right? If it failed, it's because maybe there's a misconfiguration. So go back and check the prior step that you had nano in and edit your configuration, making sure that your account exists so that way you can log in. So what we're going to do is we are going to attempt anonymous login. Remember that you enable anonymous in the configuration file, but anonymous is not on the user list, right? And you told the configuration file to use the user list as a reference for all accounts. So technically, even if we enable it, we might not be able to log in. So you are going to click in and type in anonymous for the username, press enter. And it tells you permission denied, rightfully so, because it's not on the user list file. Understand? So no, right? So whenever you see FTP like this, you can control C or you can exit. Okay? Now, if I repeat the prior step and log in as a test user, it should work, right? Okay, so I'm gonna exit out of this and reconnect so you can see. Right? If I repeat the command FTP-P 10.0.2.15, it's gonna prompt me the name, and I'm gonna put in test user. And the password, which I made as KALI, and it allows me. Why so? Because test user was added to the user list. Okay? So if you see the little FTP in the arrow, that's called the FTP command line interface. It uses a different command, but if you reconnect like what I did, when it says name, just type in the username and the password. Simple. Okay? So the test user should be able to log in. It tells me like that. if I have the right password. Now, if you made the password and you forgot, you just have to redo this, delete the user and then recreate that user or reset the password for that user account. That's it. Okay. Take a screenshot there. Now, a way that you can also exit the FTP is to use 35. But before we do that, right? I know that I'm logged in as the test user. I wanted to see if I can access the files directory because remember, we control the permission of that parent folder, right? So we're going to do cd files. And it tells me that I'm able to navigate to it. Directory successfully changed. Now I'm going to download Get in Linux, right? wget is to access web and download. Get test.txt in FTP, that's considered a download. So we are going to try to transfer or download the test.txt file that was placed there. So get test.txt. And it shows me it's transfer complete, done, good, right? Open Sesame. So the test user account is able to access FTP server. They're able to download, but remember, we control the write permission, right? Not the read permission. They can still download, but you can also see if you can put, right, the another file back up. So they can download, but they might not be able to upload. So it tells you the file size that was downloaded, how many bytes. Yeah, small file. So if you have a very large file on there, you would see how much that was downloaded. That's how we manage FTP. And then to get out of the CLI, the FTP with the little arrow and back to our terminal, you just type in exit or buy. Right? Buy gets you out and it gives you each code. So these are FTP code for tasks, kind of like what you see with status with HTTP. Okay, so now you can see a little bit of, behind the scene with FTP. So now what we're going to do next is we're going to enable web. You've seen some of this, right? If you take my other classes, the procedure for web is the same across. What we're doing is going to turn on web so that way we can scan and it makes sense to us what we're doing, right? Otherwise, it will be just boring scanning non-existing target. Yeah, I can write those lab all day, but I want you to know how to do other things in system administration to simulate the full environment. We're gonna turn off the firewall now, okay? So, because some of the services that you might be running, it might block it. So we're gonna disable it for now. We're gonna make our web totally not secure. So you know how to turn on the firewall and add the rules. Next, you're gonna turn it off to test. It tells you that the firewall is stopped. Okay, you can always enable it again. We're going to install Apache 2, which is used for Linux web services. So when you scan, you would see Apache 2, right? In Windows, it will be IIS. We'll do that in another lab. And it's going to take a minute or so to pull down the packages. Typically, NGINX comes with Apache, so you can use either or. Yes. Yeah, the VRX. So yeah, so the X is execute, R is for read, right? And it will be relevant to global, group, and user. So it kind of break that up into 3 sections. So if it have a bunch of dashes, that means that either the group or the user at the end, right, is blocked out. So yeah, so just write down the DRXW that you see. Sometimes that will also be 0, 7, depending on the type of object we access. Okay, now once you have Apache installed for 37, you are going to start the web service. So this allows our system to become a web server. Do you have to have a powerful system to make a web server? Not necessarily. When you rent cloud like AWS and Azure with Amazon or Microsoft, the amount of money you pay really speaks to the hardware on the racks, right? If you pay the minimal, if you use the free tier, they're gonna give you like dual core and 2 gig of RAM, like this, like your virtual machine. Okay, runs minimal, very slow. Then you pay a little bit more, then you get better, So any client system or server hardware based system can be web, but keep in mind that you're going to handle a lot of requests and traffic. So more powerful system and better connection is better, right? So now you have a web server locally along with an FTP server. The ping area, I didn't require the Wednesday class to do it, but it shows you how to bind, right? We talked about this before, but you can do it. And if you do it, you're going to see that port being open. I'll show you how to do it. And with web service, you also use NGINX. This allows you to run this package for your web service with Apache. Typically, Linux server uses this as well. Type yes for now, right? So it's gonna load. Now you can install NGINX and it will bring Apache with it. So that's a shortcut, but I just want to make sure I have both. Okay. I want to bind my port 9000 to port 80. So it's kind of like you building a direct corridor between two doors, right? If I enter the port 80, it's going to bind that to port 9000. And it's a way that we can correlate these. And you can do that with Python for step 42. Okay, you don't have to do this. If you do it, it's going to bind the port for that system to the port that you specify here. Okay, and you typically do that for web services. Oh, maybe it's running into error. Let me see. Yeah, so you might have to like update something. So yeah, you don't have to do 42 if you cannot bind it. I'm running into traceback application issue with Python. So I have to make sure it's not able to correlate the socket here. So if you get an error, you can skip that part. Okay. But if you run this successfully, basically it's going like what we've seen in the last lab. You're going to have a landing page and a bind. For now, we're going to go to 45. So if you want to open the browser, you can also do Firefox and then type in the URL. I'm going to show you what happens. So open Firefox, click the little Firefox icon on your virtual machine, not the outside computer. And you're going to type in HTTP, right? / and then type in your IP address 10.0.2.15. And it's going to take you to the Apache page because that's the one, right, that is enabled for port 80. So all the HTTP traffic is going to go through 80 door, right? But if you bind, you have to put in the 9000 here. So if you did this step successfully, you have to add in the port because technically it says when you bind whatever that goes into the 80, it's going to bring you to a different door, right? It's kind of like you go into a restaurant, but you can't go into the main entrance. They have a sign for you to go to an additional entrance on the side, right? That's how we bind. We can take the traffic from one door and forward it to another door, to another port. But if you don't do that step, you just type in the HTTP like what you have for 45 and it's gonna open up the Apache page. Okay? Otherwise, you have to do 46. Any question regarding this part? So you don't have to do stuff that's highlighted in pink.
Can't connect clients. I'm sorry, I tried adding the rules manually, and I've even gone back to the original config and made the adjustments there and overridden the save, but I keep getting connected. Maybe try to save on fire. Yeah, this is the back copy.
It's not the original?
Yeah, this is the original that we made a backup of.
Yeah, you're not supposed to use. So,
I adjusted it and then
yeah, you can.
and then saved it as just config, not as config outlet.
That's probably where it seems to have the file, not the one. Yeah, so this is the original one, which is a backup copy. You made a backup. But you're supposed to modify the other one. That's probably the file down here.
I gone back to the original and modified it and saved it as the one we're supposed to use until I get
So-
those issues.
So my recommendation is delete the package for VSFTPD and then reinstall it. You understand?
Yeah.
Because what happens is it modified the actual feature on it by doing that. But let's see. Or delete the original, you can do a remove command to delete the original, the big original file. Okay,
Remove backup.
yeah, but you had, what you did was you modify the backup and then you take it and modify the original and that's where it broke. You understand? That was what you told me just now. So what you can do is you can remove the actual VS, so remove VSFTPD and then pull it back down. And then only modify the configuration file, but back it up first and then modify it. So because what happened is you make changes to the backup and use the backup to modify the original, and it did not like that. You know? Somehow there's like a mismatch. That's what I think. Otherwise, everything else is good. Any other question? Yeah.
For me, if I'm supposed to be doing more configuration here, or do I accept? Yeah, or what I just.
Yeah, so you just access it for step 20 and then proceed to the next step using your arrow key and move down to the line for each step. So for a line for step 21, move your cursor down to where it says anonymous and change that. So control X. Oh, yeah, so once you have opened it and modified it. Yeah, so if you have everything changed, the second time you access it, if you didn't modify anything, it just take it back. You don't access exit, so if you didn't modify anything, it's just exit. Yeah, so you already saved it. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Yeah, let me see.
So I removed it, I've reinstalled the package.
Okay, and then access, back up the original and then modify the original. That was the whole goal on backup. Not change the backup and update the original, but back up the original and then change the original. Okay, other questions? Okay. All right, so once we have our web server up, then we can scan, right? Our target is going to be our web server, but I also wanted to add the security app, unsecure app. So DVWA, you've seen this already. We're gonna add it, and the requirement for DVWA is it needs a web server. So typically it's gonna bring Apache with it, but we already have Apache, so it's installing it is simple. So what you can do is you can just close the landing page and then you're back to the terminal. So sudo app install DVWA. And then yes, you can also add the switch yes with the install command and like following space dash Y, it's gonna not prompt you. Now, we are gonna do a little bit of fingerprint, so you are going to find some operating system information, and the capital V gives you the version, and then you just need to put in the target. So remember that we have FTP and HTTP server running on our local system. So once you have also the damn vulnerable web app, your app is not secure. It's through port 80, right? It would be prone to injection. So when we run the scan, we would see. So we're going to run NMAP, and then we're going to plug in the IP address. So this is a placeholder. Whatever I highlighted, you got to plug in the 10.0.2.15 there, okay? So I'm going to copy the front of the command and then type in the IP address. 0.2.15. So if this is a real system that's hosted, right, this is going to be the public IP of your web server or your FTP server, okay? But this is the local server that we use to simulate the web server and the FTP. We're going to put in the IP address there. So where I highlight, make sure you type in the IP address that we record earlier, which is 10.0.2.15. So it tells me that it does have port 21 open, right? This is the version of VSFTPD. This is port 80, and it's running web service with Apache. It's Debian, right? So the header of the server, right? I talked to my 27B class. When we grab the banner, we would see, if you took that class before, we would see the type of services and its version. It's confirmed, right? Now, in the server header, it says 0.66, right? And it's the same match there. And the OS, which is Unix, or we know that Linux came from Unix. Sometimes you would have the actual kernel version and sometimes you don't, okay? Depending on the command that you use. So answer the question, which ports are open? Port 21. So why doesn't it list port 20? We enabled that earlier, but when you install VSFTPD, it mainly used this port 21. Okay. How many ports are closed? Did it say how many ports that it scanned that's closed? So 998. So it does scan like 1,000. But you should ask, well, what happens to, other ports like 40,000 and 50,000 in the range, right? Well, we enable that range, but this app right now, NMAP, is only scanning the common ports in the lower range, right? 0 to 1,000. You can tell it to scan the upper ports. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run the script that can be added with with the NMAP for FTP. I'm going to tell you the script is no longer effective. So even if you run this, you're going to get the same thing here. But I want to show you that you can use script with the parameter. Okay. So we're going to add in the option script, and we want to tell it which script that we're using. If you read their book or go to the NSE section of NMAP website, there's tons of script that you can use with this tool. Some scripts are good and some are not effective. So we're gonna type in the IP address in subsequent 10.0.2.15 for our target. Oh, sorry, I had a colon. And in some cases, you have to do sudo nmap for elevated privilege. And so in this one, when it ran the script, it doesn't tell me anything about anonymous accounts. So as you can see, it's the same result because it is the same system and it has nothing to give me about FTP connection, right? It does have an FTP connection at port 20. That's all it tells me is the port that's open for the connection. Okay. So does it allow it? Yes, because you see the open port. Is there anonymous information? No, there's nothing there, right? So maybe we can look into the script and modify the criteria a little bit on how we use it. Then you can use VolScan. This is a package which is a additional element or feature that you can use with NMAP, but you need to download and then and be able to install and use it. So for 51, right? You're gonna run one command at a time. First, you're gonna download it from Git. So basically, you're gonna pull the code package for VolScan. Then you are going to use it, right? You are going to access the actual VolScan. And VolScan is used to look at common vulnerability databases to give you information about it. So in addition to NMAP, we can look for vulnerabilities using VolScan. And it's going to go through all of these repository files to be able to give you the details. So that way you don't have to use many tools just to access these repository, right? So it's a quick way that we can use two things together. So I need to run this command after I download. And that would allow us to be able to have the directory link for our application. Then we are going to see if we can run the script with NMAP for with VolScan included for our target. And see if we actually have any vulnerability information. So this is a way that you can use, right, package. And so it does give you a lot more detail, right? I'm not going to expect you to count up all of these but it's useful that you can see there's some Apache, bless you. Okay. There's also security advisory with Apache if you're using Gentoo or Debian. We're using Debian, so we want to look at that section, right? The version of Linux that you use the service with is important. So it tells you some detail there. Denial of service remotely. So if you're using older version before 2.0.44, we're using the 0.66. So we don't have to worry about this one, but if you might run into memory leak issues. So there's a lot of issues with Apache itself, right? Depending on the version that you're using. You still cannot connect?
Yeah, but I'm getting deeper into the reason it's saying it can't read the config file.
Yeah, so your config file is either buried or it's modified. It's placed somewhere. Okay. So files cannot be. Why don't you so CD into that. CD do BTC and the package itself. Then look at look at your information. See, there's no directory. So
What was I? It's right.
you might have to go. I think you can navigate through the packages there. So get you re-download it. Find it. Click here in the folder. Go open folder. And see, go to system, file system. You can see it's right there. Find the VSFTPD applications. So they remove you didn't install it, so pull it again. And install it.
Yes. State's already here somewhere.
Already didn't do this. Why don't you do feel the other? Or the direction. Has too many targets. So it's possible that it's not linked to the variable for that directory. Okay, do ls, let me see. ls. So cd into etc. No, you have to give it a full path. I think you have to go to user or something. File system. Look at the path. There's
Those same slashes.
yeah. Slash. ls. So you have. It's not in the directory, that's a problem.
It's not in the right directory.
It's not in its own direction, that's the problem. We need to delete this and this, the two file and the user list. You can do remove, just if you're in the interface, just delete it in the interface. Three files in the view. Speed. Christian time. Okay, delete that. Go back here. Do sudo rm. This see maybe there's fragment of the package left, so sudo rm VSFTPD. That was the file, like the folder.
Didn't do that folder.
Okay, so it doesn't find. Okay, now pull exit, go back, so cd same stuff. Or cd back to the main home, and then start over with the pull. Sometimes even when you uninstall it, it still sees it somehow with the fragment of it. So okay, I do have about 15 minutes, so we'll get through part D for nikto, and then if we don't hit burp, that's fine. I'm okay with that, but I encourage you to use burp. So we're gonna do sudo apt install nikto. I think it's there. Oh, maybe it's not with Linux, Callie. So you can install nikto. Okay. And then once you do that, remember that this is for web application. And then we want to be able to start our application. We installed that earlier. So DVWA start -start. We installed that in the earlier step. Type in your password and it's going to open up your app. We can minimize it to keep it running. And now we're going to scan it. So we're going to do a nikto help first to learn about our commands, right? I'm sorry, H is for host. So we're going to target, we're going to set up our host and then 10.0.2.15. And it tells me that that's the target I set up for, right? I'm running an application on that. It's hosting at port 80. It's a vulnerable web app. It's not using HTTPS. It's hosting on a Linux system. So it fingerprint the operating system there. And then it's going to tell me the services. So the software, Apache for that service. There are some vulnerability information. So you can take a screenshot, but as an analyst, you have to go down and write down, right, information that it's pulling there. Now what we're going to do is we have the port information. We're going to narrow it down. We're going to scan that specific port or pathway to our system. So you can use a -P with NMAP, and then you are going to scan that port and you're going to put it into a text file. The result is going to go into the text file. If you want, but the lab calls for that. Yes. Yeah. Press Control X to exit. And then that's a separate step.
Okay,
That's a different step. So save your file first. So Control X, right to file. You are going to save. So
actually, I have a question.
So, okay, I think you had changed the file
yeah.
name. So hit Control C, hit Control C. Okay, now Control X. And then yes. And then enter. Do not change anything, press enter. There you go. Now you save the what you edit to that. Next step. Okay, yeah, if you want to modify the name, that's what you type in, but if not, you can cancel out of the save process and redo it. Okay, so when you scan, you are going to put in your greppable output into a text file. And this is how you can bring your result into a document or a file, right? For later reporting. If you want to cancel this, you can press Control C, right? Because it's going to continue to scan and run. So nikto can be a way that you can actively scan the system as it runs, but it's going to take up the resources. So once you take a screenshot, you can press Control C to cancel that, to get out of it. If not, wait for it. But so to do step 59, I'm going to bring that into the text file, the result of my scan from NMAP. And it tells me that there should be only one address because that's our target, right? But because we put in a CIDR here, that's a segment. So you can do a range by putting in a segment of your network. So it's going to say it's going to go from the network address. So it's kind of like I want to scan all the houses on that street. I can actually put in a network segment. This is going to be the subnet mask. So /24 represents 24 bits that's on in that subnet mask. So that's be 255, 255.255.0. So technically it's that segment of your network. So it's like saying that side of town is going to get scanned. So how many addresses? It tells you 256 addresses. Why not 255? It's because it scanned the network address along with all the hosts within it. So if you want a range of IP, you can use a CIDR like this real quick. And then we want to read the scan that we did, right? You can use the cat command to do this. I'm able to go further today than the Wednesday class, but. And so what you're going to do is you're going to read, you're going to take what's in our nikto scan, and then you are going to put that into the target.txt. And then you are going to, so there's certain things that we want to filter, and it tells you that here. So you can use AWK, which allows you to filter a certain pattern, and you want to print up to like a certain character of the line, because you don't want a bunch of text, because it's just better to clean up your data, and you're going to put it into a different file. And then now you are going to read it. Target.txt. And it's only going to narrow down the hosts that you just scanned. Then we're going to put it into CSV. The reason why we put it into CSV is so if you use another analysis application, it is friendly. So we are going to scan the file output and put it into the CSV file. Okay. So you're going to screen capture here, and you basically just answer the question. We're going to end it at part D. I don't need for you to go to part E, but if you have time, you can run Burp Suite real quick, which I can show. So once we put all of our scan into the scan.csv, it's going to format it as that file. And CSV, the way that you open it up, it's going to look very similar to what you've seen with Excel or spreadsheet type of application, but we can use it with analysis application to be able to do that. So take a screenshot. So what did you learn about nikto? Well, it gives you the overall web application vulnerability information. There's some reference on where you can find resources for your vulnerability, like going into Mozilla or, vendor specific or related service, like web X content options, cross-site scripting information, etc. And it's basically a good way to get some basic vulnerability address, right? Now, if you want to look at columns and row in your CSV file, you just cat it. Everything you can do it in a terminal, which is beautiful for Linux. So we can Control C here to cancel our scan, and we can paste to see if we can filter. Now, if your scan is incomplete, sometimes you cannot see everything. So I'm good with, I just want to show you how you can look at a file, right? With columns and specific things to read. To get out of this, you're going to press Q to quit. I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to run Burp Suite. Burp is installed on Kali, so you can just open it up. But if you don't have it installed, you just need to make sure you install Java and then go to Burp Suite documentation. It shows you how you can install it. Now, limited edition is the community edition. It's going to open up the UI. Keep in mind that if your virtual machine is limited with RAM and processor, it's going to take a while. You just need to accept the license. Moving forward, you are going to use the community version, so this is the only option. Unlike the professional version, you can have other things to say. Go next. And then we're going to you don't have a configuration file to start, so we're going to use the default and then start. Bye.
Yeah.
Then it's going to run, and you are going to follow the step to turn on the proxy. What's up?
Oh no, just you said we don't need to do
Yeah, you don't need to do it. It just shows you how you can run and set it up.
Okay.
We'll also use it in another lab, but I want to show you since I have a few minutes. So if you are done with D, you can just shut it down and then make sure you submit. Okay, so this is what burp looks like, right? You can set up your target, your proxy. So once you run burp suite, if you need to install it, you can run 66. But I wanted to show you how you can enable proxy on PONAT. So here's an open up command line, sudo, and this is already installed on Kali. So if you use another version of Linux, you have to install PONAT 2.15. And typically, if we use port 80 for web, we can use 8080 for proxy for web. Remember, proxy is like the middleman. We can use it to filter, we can use it to screen, we can use it to intercept, right? So proxy is ran at port 80, and it's going to say it's listening. So we are waiting for traffic to happen. If you want to access, you want to see something here, open up your Firefox and then type in 10.0.2.15 8080. Let me see. Maybe it's on a yeah. So if you do a loopback address, which is a local host and port 8080, but watch what happens, right? As you connect to it, it should start some kind of activity. It's gonna log this eventually. Okay. So I can view, so now in Burp Suite, it tells me to go to Proxy tab, right? Click interception on. So you click that button, it's going to turn on the interception. And we are going to, you can open browser through it and then access the link. Okay. So when you click open browser, it's going to show you the background, the behind the scene for your proxy in Burp. But this proxy needs to be established before you open up your Burp. Okay. So that's how you're able to have interception. You're going to start seeing, like, if I need to go to HTTP 127.0.0.1. And then any specific port will be the proxy, like 8080. So that's our proxy. That's our web. And reload this. Where's my burp? So you can play with it and see, and burp allows you to see all the things that's happening. Eventually you can, take that traffic and then bring it over for cross-site scripting or something. Bye. If you're doing pen testing. So take a screenshot to show your burp if you got this far, but you don't know, it's not required. And then shut down your system. Did it work?
No, I'm gonna try running it on my system later this week.
So I would start with the new Kali, extract it, go through it, make sure that when you follow the steps, don't do anything to the ORIG file, but do it when in the configuration file. Yeah, you shouldn't have any kind of issues if you do that. Okay, let me stop
I think
recording.
there's just some weird misconfiguration